Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
Okay, so this is actually a take two as we were doing this one last night and then it got interrupted. So, it's not a big surprise at all. This is one of those absolutely fun topics that we love. And at the same time, there's absolutely no way that the controllers want you to understand what's going on with this topic.
And the fun part is since we are all working on our ability to see different things, when we go ahead and explore with our consciousness, we'll be able to see more than they want us to see.
They're very aware of this, and this is why everything is happening. So make sure you're subscribed to both channels, Evolutionary Energy Arts and EEARTS. Do check out the new playlist to help you guys go down rabbit holes. As the first one up is Tartaria, Atlantis, Lemuria, Mu, and then we have Down the Giants rabbit hole, Anunnaki, Gigi, Vedic astrology, channeled messages, healing through energy work, Qigong meditation, Reiki. Who are we exactly? Consciousness and reality, natural health and wellness, earth changes, mantras, and then we have a binge-worthy. Well, we are going to be exploring some of the desert in actuality between the Grand Canyon. There's a lot to uncover in the Grand Canyon. There's a lot that we know is hidden in the Grand Canyon on purpose. And we're going to shoot over here towards China Lake, Ridgecrest, and Death Valley area. It's straight across. Oh, how many tunnels connect these areas, and who is down inside these tunnels?
I know. This is information that, why do they make it such a deliberate attempt to keep this stuff out of our sight, out of our 3D sight, that is?
Yeah, and Cindy and I have been all over these areas and are romping and exploring, and somebody that's done a ton of exploring is Graham Hancock, and he's shared so much with us. Here he has a tweet where he's saying, during the making of his Netflix documentary series Ancient Apocalypse, he and his crew were banned from filming at Serpent Mound in Ohio. Many are amazed such censorship could happen in the U.S. Well, no, not really. We're not amazed at all. Because they don't want you uncovering things, especially things about six-fingered, six-toed giants. Mm-hmm. The indigenous people know about this. And this is, again, why their ways have been totally squashed, and why these people have been subject to so much abuse. Because, again, they're connected to the land. They have these oral traditions and histories that they've passed on down from generation to generation that clearly talks about the fact that giants are a fact. There are many different species of giants, some nice, some not so nice. And when I look at their faces, I see my dad, and actually I got a picture of my dad, a couple of pictures up on the wall behind the monitor here. And yeah, he exactly had the exact same nose and the same bone structure because he was 25% Native American. And, the vast majority of the rest is just quote-unquote Mexican, which is, again, a mix of different things. And we're all mutts. That's the bottom line. We are all mutts on this planet. There is no pure bloods, none of that.
No. There's no pure bloods at all. But some of us are tied into that Native American blood, as my father, too, has a lot of Native American in him. And, it's just interesting. Mike and I are so tied together at the hip now. It's like a past life thing where we know that we have spent time together, and other lives we just happen to be close. Our relatives happen to be close to the same kind of area in the United States, and I thought that was interesting too.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Grand Canyon, they'll tell you it's formed by water erosion through countless thousands and millions of years. And the reality is many people are understanding that changes happen rapidly. They can happen just in the blink of an eye, so to speak. And, the Thunderbolts Project has done a lot to uncover plasma discharge. And, and then there's also, just all the wars of the gods that are talked of in many of these different traditions. In, the Vedic Ramayana, Mahabharata, all this is talked about. And advanced technology, advanced civilizations, hundreds of thousands of humanoid species that are in our galaxy alone. As you're looking at a little circle, what is that circle there in the Grand Canyon? What could it be? Well, April 5th, 1909 edition of the Arizona Gazette featured an article entitled Explorations in the Grand Canyon. Remarkable finds indicate ancient people migrated from the Orient. From the Orient. Ah, that's interesting. According to the article, the expedition was financed by the Smithsonian. Aha. Yeah, the Smithsonian and the Vatican, they have that in common, that whatever goes in doesn't come out. And it's all about sweeping our history under the rug, burying it, sending, mummies' bodies, giant bodies to the depths of the ocean, or destroying them in some other way. Yep. So why would they finance this? Well, what did they do? Do we have displays of giants all throughout our museums? No. They financed it so they could cover it up. That's the bottom line. So it could be covered up and kept from you knowing.
I know. And then not only that, but they finance people to collect information that they label as evidence of our natural history. And then they put in our schools only those things that we need to know that's going to be advantageous for them. So it is a big game that we are beginning to grow out of and expand out of.
So not only things that looked like they came from the Orient, things that looked Egyptian. Things that looked Egyptian. Hieroglyphics, statues of Egyptian deities, mummies. Oh, it's a tangled web we weave. Again, here is the Grand Canyon National Park. And what we're going to find is a lot of these things look like they came from over here on the other side of the globe in Tibet. And also way over here in Egypt. Okay, so easier to look this way, right? How did that happen? How did it happen? Well, the simple answer is our history is not what we're told. We've had the ability to travel around the globe, and humanity has traveled around the globe many times. There have been many high civilizations, highly evolved technological civilizations, living amongst others who are not so technologically evolved. And those that weren't so technologically evolved looked at the others that were and might have thought they're the gods. Mm-hmm. They're the gods, right? So the Isis temple capstone, and then the doorway that leads within that is closed and you can't get in there to this day. Inside the Grand Canyon, you find mummies. You find statues that look very much exactly like what we might find in Cairo and all throughout Egypt. And then you also find statues that look reminiscent of Buddha or maybe Vishnu. Oh, it's documented. It's all documented. You could look at the article, and we are going to look into the article. They found mummies. They found all sorts of odd things in there. And this is a massive cave system. This is a massive, massive cave system. In fact, again, last night when we were asking the guides about this, they were asking questions back. And you could see the Gazette, Monday evening, April 5th, 1909. It was continued from the first page. And do you want to share what they were saying?
Sure. Of course, I asked the question, well, what's in there? and the guides, being guides, they gave me a very interesting question back. And they asked me, why is it so important for you to know? So that was the information that I had to sit with and think about, well, why is it so important for me to know? But that's the answer. So I asked myself the question, Cindy, why do you need to know? And it's a deep human curiosity of needing to understand where I'm from and needing to know the truth, wanting to know the truth. And I think that lies in each and every one of us. And then the information started to open up to me. It started to come to me of all these different cultures, all of these different beings at one time and point walked the entire planet, and them knowing what they know and the things that were going to happen, bringing all of these different cultures, different beings, different items, all to a location where hopefully it will survive and we will know who we are, where we're from. We will have access to that one day. One day we'll be able to go in there and we'll be able to look at our ancestors. We'll be able to understand who we're from, because we're going to feel it. When we feel and see statues, tapestries from old and long ago, and we connect with that, that's your DNA speaking. It's not just, oh, you like it, that's a neat thing. No, your DNA is saying, hey, look at this. Remember this? This is who you are. And then you open yourself up to true memories, information that's allowed to come through for your human experience. So there are other locations where all of this information lies, in hopes that with the Earth cataclysm, these items will make it for generations to come. And here we are.
And so that brings us to Turkey. And so, this is why also sometimes when we have videos where we have problems, sometimes it's not necessarily the bad ones that are interfering. And it could be the, quote unquote, the bad guys, dark hats, that do interfere, but it ends up being for a good reason, because it ends up helping us to piece things together for you. So what we give you here is Kuyu. This is in Anatolia. This is in modern day Turkey. It was part of the Ottoman Empire. And this is the area where we have massive underground cave systems that could house tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. When you hear stories of Noah's Ark coming to a rest over at Mount Ararat, again, that's not too far away. And when we think about humanity, when we think about the survivors of the Younger Dryas, the survivors of the massive cataclysms, especially the big cataclysm 12,000 years ago, the Younger Dryas cataclysm, where do people come from? And this gets back to the Hopi. What happened with the Hopi? Well, they were led inside the earth while things were happening outside the earth. And then they were told when it was safe to go back outside the earth by non-human beings, by the ant people. And literally the ant people's names are Anunnaki and Hopi. Now again, Anunnaki is a vast term. So, even though we might refer to them as the Anunnaki, and we might be thinking of the beings that we could also call the Nibiruans, so to speak, the controllers of the controllers, who are in fact controlled themselves by the Draco, who are in fact controlled by this AI intelligence. The AI Black Dragon is what we see it represented as. Again, there is the true power structure and how it transverses on down. And again, that is a 4D really centered power structure that we see. But these periods of great cataclysm, we do have help, and there's always a remnant. And you get this also from your Bible and many other stories. Again, the Bible is mostly a collection of things that have been constructed in much more recent times, covering more ancient stories. But again, there is so much that has been washed over in ways to make it almost undecipherable. But we get more clarity as we go further and further into this time period, because our abilities are getting turned on every single day, stronger every single day, more perceptive, as long as we don't go down the road the controllers want us to go down. So this was a center over here where they gathered a lot of humanity to survive a major cataclysm. And this is the same thing with what we see all the way over here, over in the Grand Canyon. Again, it's another case of making sure that there are survivors of massive cataclysm. And so, who really was here? Well, it could be a lot of different people that were here. So, did an ancient lost civilization once live in a secret underground city below the Grand Canyon? Absolutely. And again, this was all about surviving these massive cataclysms, which we will be faced with yet again. And we are just going through the beginning stages right now.
Mm-hmm. We're just really touching on things, and time is so vast. It's hard to say exactly how long are we going to be in the beginning stages, or, how long is Earth going to be giving birth pains. The only thing that saddens me is that technology is forcing her to do things that she would rather not do because she doesn't want to hurt our children. And we've been disconnected from the earth because we should know exactly when something is going to happen. So we leave the area, but we've been disconnected from that as well. But, if you go and you explore in these caves, if you remote view, you're going to see a lot of creatures walking, or they're made of materials. I guess you could call them statues, but they're definitely not creatures that we see today. And there's many different layers of them, two-legged, four-legged, winged, four wings. I mean, things that you could never really perceive in this 3D realm right now.
So we're going to talk about G.E. Kincaid. He was the explorer that found the great underground citadel of the Grand Canyon during a trip from Green River, Wyoming, down the Colorado in a wooden boat to Yuma several months ago. And again, that's several months ago from 1909. According to the story related to the Gazette by Mr. Kincaid, the archaeologist of the Smithsonian Institute, which is financing the expeditions, have made discoveries which almost conclusively prove that the race who inhabited this mysterious cavern, hewn in solid rock by human hands, was of Oriental origin, possibly from Egypt, tracing back to Ramses. So again, what we're sharing is, again, something that you're not going to find in these articles, because it's more conjecture again, and going through what they were noticing, which we'll share here. But with the remote viewing and also the info from the guides, it fills in so many of the pieces. Get an idea about just how big this is. So this goes on to say, under the direction of Professor S.A. Jordan, the Smithsonian Institute is now prosecuting the most thorough explorations, which will continue until the last link in the chain is forged. Nearly a mile underground, about 1,480 feet below the surface, the long main passage has been delving into to find another mammoth chamber from which radiates scores of passageways, like spokes of a wheel. So a massive chamber with all these passageways going off in every direction. Several hundred rooms have been discovered. Reached by passageways running from the main passage, one of them having been explored for 854 feet, almost 3 football fields, and another 634 feet, longer than 2 football fields. The recent finds include articles which had never been known as native to this country, and doubtless they had their origin in the Orient. War weapons, copper instruments, sharp-edged and hard as steel indicate a high state of civilization reached by these strange people. So interested have the scientists become that preparations are being made to equip the camp for extensive studies, and the force will be increased to 30 or 40 people. And think about this. This is 100 and, this is 1909. So we're talking like 113, 114 years ago. What happened? Why don't we have all this info out there to the public exactly what they found and how it all pieces together, because it's the Smithsonian. This is not about uncovering the past. This is about covering up the past.
Right. And, you could call the Smithsonian somebody like the professionals. So whenever you hear anybody say, well, let's just let the professionals decide, remember, those professionals are making sure that you don't learn anything that's not going to help the controllers.
So right is a scan of a tracing of a Xerox copy of photographs depicting the hieroglyphics that they found. Very, very Egyptian looking, right? I mean, it's obviously Egyptian looking. Everything was just wiped out. I mean, they just covered this all over. And this is a massive find. This would have been the find of the ages. This is this is just the thing that would have just changed everybody's perception, and you would look at it as discovering a Rosetta Stone, so to speak, to the past and to what really happened. And it all is covered up. So again, this is just another piece of evidence to show how the fact checkers, those that are always giving us our reality, they're not sharing with us what's real. They're sharing with us an illusion. They are sharing distortions. They are sharing complete falsehoods in order to keep us in the dark. So he goes on, first I would impress that the cavern is nearly inaccessible. The entrance is 1,486 feet down the sheer canyon wall. It's located on government land. Again, 85% of Nevada is government land. Somewhere in the 70s, like 70-something percent of land in Wyoming is government land. About half of all of California is government land. So much of the West is government land. Why? Because there's too much there to be uncovered that would blow the paradigm. And we would realize that they are hiding all this from us. They're hiding everything from us. They're hiding the true nature of who we are from us. They're keeping us locked in these paradigms that keeps them in control, because they would not have control if we understood exactly who we are. And, again, this is that time where it's all going to come out in the open. So a trip there would be fruitless. The visitor would be sent on his way. They would not be allowed to go in. And it's still the case to this very day. The story of how I found the cavern has been related, but in a paragraph, I was journeying down the Colorado River in a boat alone, looking for mineral. Some 42 miles up the river from El Torvar Crystal Canyon, I saw on the east wall stains in the sedimentary formation about 2,000 feet above the riverbed. There was no trail up to this point, but I finally reached it with great difficulty. Above a shelf which hid it from view from the river was the mouth of a cave. There are steps leading from this entrance some 30 yards to what it was. At the time, the cavern was inhabited the level of the river. When I saw the chisel marks on the wall inside the entrance, I became interested, securing my gun, and went in. During that trip, I went back several hundred feet along the main passage till I came to the crypt in which I discovered the mummies. One of these I stood up and photographed by flashlight. I gathered a number of relics, which I carried down the Colorado to Yuma, Arizona, from whence I shipped them to Washington with details of the discovery. So, all this just, again, disappears from our history. The main passageway is about 12 feet wide, narrowing to 9 feet towards the farther end. About 57 feet from the entrance, the first side passages branch off to the right and the left, along which on both sides are a number of rooms about the size of ordinary living rooms of today, though some are 30 by 40 feet square. That's huge. These are entered by oval-shaped doors, and they are ventilated by round air spaces through the walls into the passages. The walls are about 3 feet 6 inches in thickness. The tomb or crypt in which the mummies were found is one of the largest of the chambers, and the walls slant back at an angle of about 35 degrees. And here you see a picture of that. Isn't that pretty cool? Pretty cool depiction. So the passages are chiseled or hewn as straight as they could be laid out by an engineer. The ceilings of many of the rooms converge to the center. The side passages near the entrance run at sharp angle from the main hall, but towards the rear they gradually reach a right angle in direction. Over 100 feet from the entrance is the cross hall, several hundred feet long, in which are found the idol or image of the people's god sitting cross-legged with lotus flower or lily in each hand. The cast of the face is oriental and the carving this cavern. The idol resembles almost a Buddha, although scientists are not certain as to what religious worship it represents. Taking into consideration everything found thus far, it's possible that this worship most resembles the ancient people of Tibet. Surrounding this idol are smaller images, some very beautiful in forms, others crooked-necked and distorted shapes, symbolically probably of good and evil. There are 2 large cactus with protruding arms, one on each side of the dais, on which the god squats. Yeah, again, a Tibetan Buddha wouldn't typically be depicted with a cactus in Tibet. Right. At least I've never noticed that. You know. All this carved out of a hard rock resembling marble. In the opposite corner of the cross hall were found tools of all descriptions made of copper. These people undoubtedly knew the lost art of hardening this metal, which had been sought by chemicals for centuries without result. On a bench running around the workroom was some charcoal and other material probably used in the process. There's also slag and stuff similar to mat, showing that these ancients smelted ores, but so far no trace of where or how this was done has been discovered, nor the origin of the ore. Among the other finds are vases and urns and cups of copper and gold, made very artistic by design. The pottery works include enameled ware and glazed vessels. Another passageway leads to granaries, such as are found in Oriental temples. They contain seeds of various kinds. One very large storehouse has not been entered, as it is 12 feet high and can be reached only from above. 2 copper hooks extend on the edge, which indicates that some sort of ladder was attached. These granaries are rounded, as the material of which they are constructed, I think it's very hard cement. A gray metal is also found in the cavern, which puzzles the scientists, for its identity has not been established yet. It resembles platinum. Strewn promiscuously over the floor everywhere are what people call cat's eyes, the yellow stone of no great value. Each one's engraved with the head of the Malay type. On all the urns or walls over doorways and tablets of stone were found images, mysterious hieroglyphics similar to what the Smithsonian Institute hopes yet to discover. The mummies examined so far proved to be male, no children or females being buried here. That's interesting as well. The engraving on the tables probably has something to do with the religion of the people. Similar hieroglyphics have been found in southern Arizona. Among the pictorial writings, only 2 animals are found. One is of a prehistoric type. The tomb or crypt in which the mummies were found is one of the largest of the chambers, walls slanting back at an angle of about 35 degrees. On these tiers of mummies, each one occupying a separate hewn shelf. At the head of each is a small bench on which is found copper cups and pieces of broken swords. Some of the mummies are covered with clay, and all are wrapped in a bark fabric. Bark fabric. I wonder if that's dark or bark. Really, literally bark. The urns or cups on the lower tiers are crude, while as the higher shelves are reached, the urns are finer in design, showing a later stage of civilization. It's worthy of note that all the mummies examined so far have proven to be male. Again, no children or females buried here. This leads to the belief that this was the warriors' barracks. Among the discoveries, no bones of animals have been found, no skins, no clothing, no bedding. Many of the rooms are bare, but for water vessels. Could be. Maybe they were they didn't harm animals. Maybe they were vegetarian and didn't utilize animals in any way as far as that goes, as far as slaughtering them. One room about 40 by 700 feet. That's huge. Was probably the main dining hall. Can you imagine a main dining hall? 40 feet by 700 feet? How many people are you feeding? Holy cow. Cooking utensils were found there. What these people lived on is the problem, though it's presumed that they came south in the winter and farmed in the valleys going back north in the summer. So again, we don't eat the same in different ages. When we're in a golden age, we're living off the prana. We're living off the life force. We're actually not consuming anything. We don't have to.
I know, because the very energy around us definitely changes. I would say right now, it's a good time for us to practice things like pour breathing, but you would definitely want to do it somewhere where you know that the air is clear, because obviously we do bring in that information and any other things that are, floating around in the air. So right now we have to be aware of where we're doing pour breathing, but there is a time and place where when we do these things, we bring in the prana and it's pure, pure, pure.
Upwards of 50,000 people could have lived in the caverns comfortably. One theory is that the present Indian tribes found in Arizona are descendants of the serfs or slaves of the people which inhabited the cave. Undoubtedly, a good many thousand years before the Christian era, people lived here which reached a high state of civilization. The chronology of the human history is full of gaps. Professor Jordan is much enthused over the discoveries and believes that the work will find proof of incalculable value in archaeological work. Well, too bad it was all hidden. One thing I have not spoken of may be of interest. There is a chamber in one of the passageways to which is not ventilated. And when we approached it, a deadly snaky smell struck us. Our light would not penetrate the gloom, and until stronger ones are available, we will not know what that chamber contains. Some say snakes, but others boo-hoo this idea and think it may contain a deadly gas or chemicals used by the ancients. No sounds are heard, but it just smells snaky just the same. The whole underground installation gives one of shaky nerves the creeps. The gloom is like a weight on one's shoulders, and our flashlights and candles only make the darkness blacker. Imagination can reveal in conjectures and ungodly daydreams through the ages that have elapsed until the mind reels dizzily in space. In connection with this story, it is notable that among the Hopi Indians, the tradition is told that their ancestors once lived in an underground world in the Grand Canyon. Till dissension arose between the good and the bad, the people of one heart and people of two hearts. Machado, who was their chief, counseled them to leave the underworld, but there was no way out. The chief then caused a tree to grow up and pierce the roof of the underworld, and the people of one heart climbed out. They carried by Pisesvi, which means Red River, which is the Colorado, and grew grain and corn. They sent out a message to the temple of the sun asking blessings of peace, goodwill, and rain for the people of one heart. That messenger never returned, but today the Hopi villages at sundown can be seen the old men of the tribe out on housetops gazing towards the sun looking for the messenger. When he returns, their lands and ancient dwelling place will be restored to them. That is the tradition. Among the engravings of animals in the cave is seen the image of a heart over the spot where it is located. The legend was learned by W.E. Rollins, the artist, during a year spent with the Hopi Indians. There are two theories of the origin of the Egyptians. One is that it came from Asia. The other is that the racial cradle was in the Upper Nile region. Herein, an Egyptologist believed the Indian origin of the Egyptians. The discoveries in the Grand Canyon may throw further light on human evolution in prehistoric ages. This is what we learned from the article published in the Arizona Gazette. Ever since the article appeared, there's been lots of speculations whether the underground city really exists. So, this is fascinating now that the Smithsonian claims to have no knowledge of this, or they don't get into the detail of the article, which is obviously a real article. I mean, there's clippings of it. We still have that. They will maintain their narrative, which is, again, just a fable.
Just things that are only made up from people with really big imaginations. Not that there's anything tangible to it. It's just the information that is tangible that has surfaced. It's like they can't quite shove it back in the box. Pandora's box was opened, information got out, so now they're in a place where all they can really do is control it, or try to control it. And as we continue to evolve, we're going to be able to see more and more, know more and more about who we are, where we're from, what abilities, what strengths we have. It's an amazing journey we have before us.
Absolutely. Here are some other actual accounts of giants in North America from, again, the source, and there's so many of them. There's just so many newspaper clippings of old. Atlantis in the Colorado River Desert, 1947 Nevada News, near the Nevada-California-Arizona border area, 32 caves within a 180 square mile that were discovered to hold the remains of ancient, strangely costumed 8 to 9 foot giants. They had been laid to rest wearing the skins of unknown animals similar to sheepskins fashioned into jackets with pants described as prehistoric zoot suits. That sounds interesting. Same burial place had been found 10 to 15 years earlier by another man who made a deal with the Smithsonian, of course. The evidence of his find was stolen and covered up by Darwinian scientists. Dr. F. Bruce Russell had come to Death Valley from the East Coast. He had taken up mining in the West for the sake of his health, was exploring across the Colorado River into Arizona. What he found, he described as the burial place of a tribal hierarchy with a ritual hall of ancient people. He felt that some unknown catastrophe had driven them into the caves. All of the implements of their civilization were there, including household utensils and stoves. Dr. Russell reported seeing hieroglyphics chiseled on carefully polished granite within what appeared to be a cavern temple. Another cave led to their sacred hall, which contained carvings of ritual devices and markings similar to those of Masonic order. A long tunnel from this temple led to a room where, Hill said, the well-preserved remains of dinosaurs, saber-toothed tigers, imperial elephants, and other extinct beasts were paired off in niches as if on display. Ooh, isn't that really curious? Dinosaurs.
Very, very interesting. All of this information coming forward. I do hope that this is spurring on some of your guys' DNA to help you remember and go look for yourself and see what you see in there, see what you feel in there, because this is the way out. In this 3D reality, we're very much put in a construct, but we're not forced to stay in this construct, and that's one of the biggest secrets they want to keep.
10 to 15 years earlier, the caves had been seen by another miner who had fallen from the bottom of a mine shaft. In his book, Death Valley Men, Borkley related to a conversation among residents of Death Valley concerning the local Paiute Native American legends of an underground city at Wingate Pass. And we've driven by there, and I pointed it out when we were driving by there to you. I don't know if you remember or not. After falling through the ceiling of an unknown tunnel, the miner had followed it 20 miles north of the Panamint Mountains to discover a huge underground ancient city. He saw arching stone vaults with huge stone doors and a polished round table in the center of their council chamber, which had once been lit by ingenious lights fueled by subterranean gases. It goes back to the gas thing. Leaning against the walls were their tall gold spears. He said the designs on their thick golden armbands resembled them as the work of the Egyptians. Again, what is the Egyptian culture that we see? It's really, truly Atlantean, is what it is. And again, this is Atlantean that we're talking about. The tunnel ended at an exit overlooking Furnace Creek Ranch in California's Imperial Valley. He could see from there that the valley had once been underwater. The tunnel entrance had been a dock or a quay located halfway up the side of the mountain. A deal was made with the Smithsonian again for the fine, but the miner was betrayed by his partner. The evidence was stolen, the entrance concealed. In 1940, a mining journal, another find was reported of much worked gold in an 8-mile-long cave near San Bernardino. University of Arizona professor Vine Deloria, himself a Native American, made similar accusations against the Smithsonian for covering up the remains found within the burial mounds of the Mound Builders civilization. Surviving diaries from before the time Darwin attest to these discoveries. The Mound Builders were a different civilization than that of the Indians, they said. The mounds contained the remains of hundreds of giants, along with the bones of giant mastodons. In Cincinnati, Ohio, the giant bones were found with large shields, swords, and engraved stone tablets. In Kentucky and Tennessee, the bones of powerful men of towering stature were excavated. One of these 7-foot-tall men was buried with an engraved copper plate beneath his head. A woman was found also. She was wearing a silver girdle with the letters written on it. The Detroit Free Press reported in 1884 the discovery in Gartersville, Mississippi, of the remains of a giant with waist-length jet-black hair. He was wearing a copper crown. With him in his timber burial vault were his children, who wore garments decorated with bone beads. The tomb was covered with large flagstones engraved with inscriptions. In Cayuga, Niagara, there is a place called the Cemetery of the Giants, which was discovered in 1880. These giants were 9 feet tall, appeared to have died violent deaths. Their axes were found with them. Giant bones were also unearthed from a rock fissure on Lake Erie Island. In some of the finds of giant bones, the bones lay in confusion as if left on a battlefield. The Smithsonian does display some artifacts of the mound builders found with bones of the giants, shell discs, and carved stone beads. Many of the bones turned to powdery ash within a short time of being exposed to the air. The Smithsonian has been reluctant to test some less fragile finds. The late Vine Deloria said that's because they mightn't find a really early date for the bones, and it would be distressing to their Darwinian timeline. But this well-known story of American giants isn't alone. The New York Times reported a 9-foot-tall skeleton of a man discovered in a mound near Maple Creek, Wisconsin in 1897 in December. The Times also carried the story, Strange Skeletons Found Near Lake Delavan, Wisconsin, in its May 4th, 1912 issue. The skulls of giant skeletons excavated from a mound had a minute resemblance to the head of a monkey. But on April 9th, 1885 story in New York Times entitled Missouri's Buried City, a strange discovery in a coal mine near Moberly, revealed a find that predated the supposed citadel in the Grand Canyon by 24 years. Moberly, the largest city in Randolph County, Missouri, had a population of 6,108 in the 1880s. Coal miners, sinking a shaft 360 feet deep, broke into a cavern, revealing a wonderful buried city, the article claimed. Lava arches stretched across the roof of the cavern, looming over the streets of an ancient city, which are regularly laid out and enclosed by walls of stone, which is cut and dressed in fairly good, although rude style of masonry. Workers, along with Moberly City Recorder David Coates and Moberly City Marshal George Keating, inspected the site and found a 30 by 100 foot hall in the cavern filled with stone benches and hand tools. Further search disclosed statues and images made of a composition closely resembling bronze, lacking luster. Explorers discovered a stone fountain in a wide court, still pouring perfectly pure water into its basin. But what lay besides the fountain, what that interested people exploring the site, laying besides the foundation of the fountain were portions of the skeleton of a human being. Bones of the leg measured the femur 4.5 feet, the tibia 4 feet 3 inches, showing that when alive the figure was 3 times the size of an ordinary man, and possessed a wonderful muscular power and quickness. Its skull, the story reported, was shattered. Bronze tools, granite hammers, metallic saws, and flint knives were scattered all around. They are not so highly polished nor so accurately made as those now finished by our best mechanics.
Yes, I mean, so just amazing stuff. And, you know, let me point you to the technology again. So much of this stuff we cannot match with our technology that we have today. So we look in here, you know, find Indian bones in Indian mounds. This is stuff that's really, really interesting too, from the New York Times. So we in 1892.
So I mean, when you start looking at all these dates, I mean, there's hundreds of these, and this is about the Shin Av, secret ancient underground city that's buried underneath Death Valley, 5,000 years old. So I'm getting pictures of gigantic beings that the best way I would describe them, they look kind of Viking to me. They look kind of Norse to me. They look kind of Nordic to me. You know, they're rugged and strong and, you know, physically imposing, and, you know, getting the impression of a lot of them having, you know, red or blondish hair. You know, again, when we hear these legends of Vikings in South America, and we start to think of Vikings traveling from Scandinavia all the way down on their longboats and stuff, well, the reality is quite different. You know, there are beings that had those type of physical characteristics that were living here the whole time. And in fact, you know, perhaps side by side for a long time with those that we would call the indigenous Native Americans, and perhaps preceding them as well.
Beings are very, very solid. They're very, very rugged. They can handle, you know, anything that comes to them, and they definitely work on themselves and they make themselves stronger.
Yeah. So, you know, again, this is touching on one of the stories we were talking about, and how familiar does this look? Because, you know, Cindy was living in the Death Valley area for 20 plus years. So that was basically our kind of backyard. 40-million-year-old tools from the California gold mine. In the middle of the 19th century, miners discovered hundreds of stone artifacts and human skeletons deep inside their tunnels at Table Mountain, other locations in the gold mining region. All those legends of gold mining, right? There again, the Anunnaki and the gold mines. And we have gold mines in South Africa and in Southern Africa, outside of the boundaries also of current South Africa, the country. That again, they go back hundreds of thousands of years, in some cases literally millions of years. How long has the earth been used for its resources? The answer is a very long time. These bones and artifacts were found embedded in formations that geologists now say belong to the Eocene period, 38 to 55 million years ago. Evidence was reported to the scientific world by Dr. J.D. Whitney, a chief government geologist of California, in his book, The Auriferous Gravels of the Sierra Nevada of California, published by Harvard University's Peabody Museum of Comparative Zoology in 1880. So this evidence was dropped from scientific discourse because it contradicted the current Darwinist explanations of human origins. In 1849, gold was discovered in the gravels of the ancient riverbeds on the slopes of the Sierra Nevada mountains in central California, drawing a horde of rowdy adventurers to many of these places. But what they found besides the gold was the evidence that, you know, this land has been occupied by all sorts of different beings for a very, very long time. And so while Darwinian evolution is something that's a distortion of reality, at the same time, our world wasn't created 6,000 years ago. It's not flat. And, it's not just all angels and demons, us and God on a cloud. No, there's been advanced civilizations that are global in nature. And this is what has happened. And while we could theorize Mu and Lemuria and Atlantis and say, okay, well, Mu was here, Atlantis was over there. No. These were global cultures. They were in different time frames. So Atlantis is not a golden age civilization. It's more a silver bronze age civilization, where Lemuria Mu, more of a golden age civilization.
Yes, I mean, more beings that are just working with the earth and in a symbiotic relationship with everything around them, with the plant life, with the animal life, with anything that they use to sustain their bodies. Everything is one perfect balance of give and take.
And what a perfect way to seal off the public's prying eyes. Put military bases over the entranceways to these hidden relics of our past. Federal land, thou shalt not enter.
Yeah, right.
Military base, halt or be shot. And this is what we have with China Lake, the Ridgecrest area again. This is exactly what happens, and this is how they lock us out. The truth behind Native Americans' long hair. And so why do we grow our hair long and our beard? Well, because it's an antenna. Hair is an antenna. And so there really was truly a sort of test that was done. The United States Army recruited Native Americans because of their incredible tracking skills. Like all soldiers, new recruits had to cut their long hair before going into battle. It wasn't long before the Army officials discovered Native American recruits weren't doing any better than the American soldiers that were there. So what happened? Well, they cut their hair. So when they cut off their hair, they lost their incredible tracking abilities. So they planned an experiment, and they chopped the hair off of two and left two with long hair. Two First Nation soldiers were sent out in the jungle. Soldier with buzz cut wasn't out there for very long before he was captured by the enemy, quote unquote. He quickly returned to base to wait for the soldiers to seek out the first long-haired First Nation soldier. The enemies found out quickly that it wasn't going to be as easy for them to find the long-haired soldier. As he sensed them coming from far away, he was able to make his escape. This went on throughout the whole night. Time and time again, the long-haired soldier managed to avoid capture. He was able to track where the enemy was going, and he managed to stay far, far away. When the sun came up, the experiment was over. The results, when the U.S. Army reviewed what happened during the experiment, they found that during the night, the first long-haired First Nation soldier had gone to sleep on 2 occasions and was still able to sense when the enemy was close. Despite the fact that he was asleep, he still managed to avoid capture. Not the case with the one who had his hair cut. Isn't that curious? And then when we look back here, in 1698, Emperor Peter I of Russia instituted a beer tax as part of an effort to bring Russian society in line with Western European models. To enforce the ban on beards, the Tsar empowered police to forcibly and publicly shave those who refused to pay the tax. Well, what was that story about Samson and his strength and cut his locks and all of a sudden he wasn't strong anymore? Well, abilities, because your hair actually is antennas. And they help our perceptive abilities. Why do you think they cut the hair and clean shave soldiers? So you'll take orders and you won't have an intuition to understand that you're being led astray.
Mm-hmm. And in this world that we live in, we're always doing stuff with our hair, but do not despair. Do not despair if you've cut your hair, I tell you, because there's still an energy body with that, and we can build these energies from one life to the next, and that does remain in our DNA. But if you have the hair, that's going to give you a little advantage. And here was this little guy. This is so
That's
cute.
another little hair.
Oh, Mike is so cute. It's a hair, you guys. Look at that. I mean, whoever took the time to make a little bunny and put him on the pole to peek around and smile at everybody, he's giving she is giving all those people a beautiful smile, and that is their karma.
So again, guys, thanks for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. Check out evolutionaryenergyarts.com to learn more about us, and also check out Medicinal Foods, link on every video. Look forward to your comments. Much love. God bless, and namaste.
Namaste.